Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 10 of the anime series Shokugeki no Soma. And this episode was just intense. It really went to places I never would have expected. And of course, by the end, we're left with a cliffhanger that pretty much assures what happened. You know, there's a saving grace, put it that way. We're very much opening right where we left off with that chance encounter, between Soma and Arina in the hallway. She's coming out of the bath, she's humming, and he walks right into her, knocking her on her butt. And I love how much of a kick he's getting out of it. Soma is, as I've said in videos previous, very much like a Spike Spiegel, a little more aloof and a little more comical, maybe like a marriage between Spike and Vash from Trigun, in that he's kooky, he's having fun with this, he's not really ultimately concerned with the elitist attitudes, the wearing a chip on their shoulder or on their shirt sleeve that everyone carries around with them of this self-importance, especially Arina, and we're seeing how similar-minded they are, which really just amps up her ire over him, in that he's talking about, hey, I brought cards and I guess we won't need them, this place is so posh and everything. And it turned out Arina had asked her right-hand lady to go get some cards. They were thinking about having fun. And that's amazing because this Totsuki resort, it's supposed to be the camp from hell, and everyone is being put to the nth degree of just turmoil and testing and, testing their prowess. They really have to bring it to the table. I mean, after their first match, as we saw, what's the next thing? Before they can even relax, they got to make 50 dishes for all of these, alumnus and people staying at the resort, and just being really pushed to the brink, And Soma, of course, being the first to be done and running into Arina, he goes on his merry way, having laughs about, getting her jiggling and whatever like that. And he runs into one of the senseis or one of the chefs that are going to be, I guess, overseeing some level of judgment, Dojima, who, of course, after they've had their discussion, we find out more about him from Takumi Aldini, but their chief discussion is about Arina and her history and tasting all of these different, brands of salt or whatever, and she could place them by Taste the God Tongue in action, and just showing the level of, almost unmatched prowess in that flavor reading, which we already knew, but, giving more depth to her character in sort of, presenting her as a potential threat, because she's going to have such a delicate palate with whatever eventually Soma may bring to the table, against her and that kind of thing. But of course, it's kind of like, mano a mono powwow between Soma and Dojima, and he ends up leaving. We find out, incidentally, in this discussion that the only other person the previous year who finished before everyone else was Satoshi, and, Soma's basically like, figures it's somebody I know. And I like the fleshing out of these dynamics. Of course, once we finally get into the piece de resistance, of the episode, of this sort of what, the challenge is going to be with this guy, Kojiro Shinomiya, you can tell this guy's hardcore. And as I pointed out in my previous episode discussion video, I believe this was the guy who sent the kid packing with the fruity shampoo because the aroma could mess up, the smell of a dish that was prepared. So he makes a particular recette or sort of French recipe involving lots of vegetables and getting them, the sweetness of their flavor to all be as robust as possible, all at the same time in this particular recette. And it's meticulous. He's, completely written it out in detail. And you can't skip, you can't scrimp, you can't go against it. He's even sort of, as we find out through the course of this episode, once we get to that, just, as I say, pulling no punches shock, to do with Megumi, essentially she fails. Soma passed, but she fails. She's been rendered, helpless on her own, basically. And even though she brings her skills to the table and tries to do something, get around, this sort of faultiness of not all the vegetables being fresh, not all the produce being as fresh as possible. And we find out that, this Kojiro guy, the whole purpose was to effectively sabotage as much of this, particular class that's being judged and being tested for their culinary skills, to get that many out of the way. Like, if they were not smart enough or they weren't creative enough to avoid the, sort of becoming unfresh produce and vegetables and everything, well, obviously they're not skilled enough, or they're not smart enough, or all of that. It was just tantamount to completely removing the carpet out from under these culinary whizzes and geniuses in their own right. And Megumi is one of those who falls victim to this. And this is where the turning point comes, because I, didn't expect them to actually go to that point where, hey, Megumi, you failed. And I didn't know how they were going to get out of it. I mean, Soma is getting up in Kojiro's space, and Megumi's like trying to draw him back, and like, no, you can't jeopardize your potential running in this game, And it was like grating. Like, you want to tell Soma, shut the freak up, Don't get yourself kicked out either and everything. And that's very much what this guy threatens. And then there's this great, after there's already been a great counterpoint to a degree with Soma saying, well, you know what, you're the boss and you're tentatively firing us if we fail. Wasn't it your responsibility? And that's where we find that bomb drop that he did this on purpose. But then the challenge comes. The Shokugeki challenge comes. Soma's like, do those rules apply to you guys, the chefs, the teachers, the, senseis, whatever you want to say? I'm challenging you, you mother effer, Shokugeki up in this bitch. And if I beat your ass, Megumi stays. Cliffhanger. It's like, whoa, is all I can say, because getting to that point where you hear Megumi being told, you're fired, you're out, pack your bags, you're going home. I thought in that moment, that's it, all bets were off. They are not messing around. And then I'm like, well, there's something like 24 episodes in this series, and you have, of course, Soma challenging it, and I'm starting to see the burgeoning aspect that, okay, they're going to rebound from this somehow. And of course, Soma pulls out that Shokugeki card. Whether or not he'll actually be able to follow through with it remains to be seen. We saw that this Dojima guy, he was like sort of watching both Megumi, or more pointedly Soma. He recognizes the name, and is that just because Soma is the loudmouth that he is, and he was talking up at, sort of the precursor event to everyone getting to know each other, which has gotten him under the sort of enemy watch list of everybody anyway? Or is there more to it? Is this guy somebody who has a history with Soma's father, his family, whatever? Remains to be seen. And I find that intriguing, but as I say, it kind of calls into question, are they going to even need to go to the nth degree with Soma going up against this Kojiro guy to prevent Megumi from being sent packing? Or will somebody intervene and be like, well, he's kind of right, and we don't have to go Shokugeki. We don't have to actually have this big matchup and verses and whatever. Who knows? Quite frankly. But if they do follow through with that, and they actually have Soma going up against this guy, Arina and all these other people who either loathe and hate Soma, or everyone who's like, sort of the Polar Star dormitory, all of his dormitory mates who love him, it's going to be just an intense matchup, especially this early in the game with so many episodes still to come. I can't wait to see what happens. It just really completely blindsided and gobsmacked me that Megumi was almost entirely out for the count. I'm pretty much assuring, because of where we leave off, well, they're going to rebound, they're going to undo that. Megumi is not out for the count like they hinted at, and it just remains to be seen how that's going to culminate in the next episode. So I can't wait for that. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of episode 10 of Shokugeki no Soma, if you've seen it, and if not, you should be following it, because this show is hilarious. It's funny, it's got drama, it's got great characterization, hilarious characters, and obviously, it has that great level of conflict that just ramps up the tension. And this is a surprising show to say that about, with everything considered. The hilarity and the emphasis on these recipes and, you know, making these dishes. It's just kind of funny to me to be so ramped up and see the tension so emboldened that you're like, what is going to happen, you know, with a show like this. But that's awesome. So couldn't have enjoyed this episode more for its shock factor. And I'd love to hear from you guys, as I say, what you thought of it if you've seen it. So otherwise, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.